Thank you very much for this heartfelt welcome here. I'm really glad to be back in Stockholm and represent ExpreS2ion Biotech. My name is Bent Fransen. I'm the CEO of ExpreS2ion Biotech, Nasdaq First North Growth market listed company, and the fully owner of ExpreS2ion Biotechnologies ApS, which is the Danish subsidiary where all our operations and all our patents and all our people are present. Sorry for doing this in English, as if it wasn't complicated already to explain about biotechnology, but I think it will be even more difficult in Danish. Let's move on with this in English. I will first go through a very important asset that we have in our pipeline, which is breast cancer immunotherapy. That's a major part of this presentation. In general, we have a pipeline of making cancer immunotherapies led by this breast cancer asset, but also vaccines in the infectious diseases space. I'll not cover those that much in this presentation, and you'll understand why as I go through it. And since we're listed, of course, there's the usual disclaimer about any forward-looking statements, and we'll copy this to our webpage so you can read it for yourself after the presentation.
We don't put your speech on speaker, so if you could speak up a little bit.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me all in the back? Good. Okay, let's dive into what is breast cancer all about and what is ExpreS2ion's attack on this fatal disease. Unfortunately, it takes more than 600,000 primarily women's lives every year, and we have a solution where we want to try to avoid that. Actually, 2.3 million cases of this disease are diagnosed every year, and in a large proportion of cases it's caused by a protein called HER2. HER2 is a protein that we all carry in our body, but in about 25% of cases you will see that this protein can overexpress and it can lead to tumor development, and that can lead to death ultimately. We can also see it progressing in our Western world, and so it's very important that we can do something about it. To the right, you can see a chart of the spread of the 2.3 million cases per year spread across various types of these HER2 protein types. We talk about HER2 positive, we talk about HER2 low, we talk about HER2 negative. The good thing is here that we can target both HER2 positive and HER2 low, which is a major part of the cases that are arriving. Now I'm going to show you a brief video in English. It's only 1 minute, so the speak is very fast on that video, but it'll give you a brief understanding of what this is all about.
ES2BC001, a strong and durable vaccine against HER2-expressing cancers. HER2-expressing cancers can develop in many organs. These cancers arise when abnormal cells grow uncontrollably, driven by the HER2 receptor, a key protein on the surface of certain cancer cells. ES2BC001 is a first-in-class virus-like particle immunotherapy designed to target the entire extracellular domain of HER2. The HER2 receptor has 4 extracellular domains. Current monoclonal antibodies bind to just 2 of them. Our vaccine engages the immune system to generate antibodies against all 4 domains, enabling broader, more potent inhibition of HER2-expressing cancer cells. Monoclonal antibodies target a single HER2 domain, leading to partial tumor inhibition and resistance risk. Combining them improves inhibition but does not eliminate resistance. Our vaccine induces a strong, durable polyclonal immune response for superior tumor inhibition and resistance prevention. ExpreS2ion Biotech, innovative vaccines for a healthier world.
Now that was a very speedy way of presenting it, but it is in its essence the mechanism and construction we work on in this immunotherapy we have in our pipeline. I'm going to go through it again, so there's some repetition from the video in this. This is another, perhaps more simple way of showing the vaccine, the immunotherapy that we work on. So it consists of this construction where we have designed antigens, which are synthetic versions of the HER2 protein. And what we do is targeting all the 4 domains of the HER2 receptor. And that is shown with these in the drawing with these four figures surrounding this virus-like particle. We make these using our platform, the ExpreS platform, which is a production technology that was the basis for the company's start back in 2010 and has been used to make more than 500 proteins, also for big pharma over the years. And for this purpose, we make the full-length protein of the HER2 in this manner. And what we want to do is deliver these antigens in a way so the body starts generating antibodies. And a good way to do that is by introducing it on a virus-like particle. That is shown in the middle. It's kind of a sphere which has multiple attachment points on the surface. And we have a patented technology, simply put, a super glue technology that can bind any protein of interest on the surface of this virus-like particle. It's a very innovative approach which was invented at Copenhagen University, placed in a company called AdaptVac, which ExpreS2ion co-founded back in 2017, and today we hold a 34% ownership of AdaptVac. And so by presenting to the body the HER2 antigen in a VLP manner, in a very condensed, high-density, controlled way, we can get these antibodies generated. And the good thing, as I mentioned, we target all four epitopes. Here I describe Herceptin and Perjeta. These are well-known monoclonal antibodies, which are a standard of care of breast cancer treatment today. But for example, Herceptin, also known as trastuzumab, it actually only targets the number 4 epitope of the HER2 receptor. Perjeta is a newer monoclonal antibody that came to the market. It targets only the domain 2 of the surface of the HER2 receptor. That's why you often hear about combining standard of care therapies, because you want to address as many epitopes as possible. We have a first-class approach to solving breast cancer by actually targeting all 4 epitopes of the HER2. So it generates a very broad immune response, and we have strong belief that it can overcome immune tolerance and get a long-lasting effect. And we've seen that also already using this approach in a COVID-19 vaccine project that we carried out during the pandemic, which was outlicensed to Bavarian Nordic, which brought the same principle of making a COVID-19 antigen on the surface of the same VLP through to clinical phase 3. So we can say this has been clinical phase 3 validated. It's safe. It's been, with our platform, it's been tested in more than 4,000 people during the COVID-19. And now we're just approaching or starting the first clinical phase 1 trial in breast cancer with the same approach. And also, not least, I should mention that the VLP concept as such is actually well known from commercially available vaccines today. So if you've heard about HPV vaccine against cervical cancer, such as Gardasil or Cervarix, they're actually also based on antigens glued to the surface of a VLP. We, however, have a VLP system where the superglue is exceptional, because we can control the direction of the protein and we can ensure the high density of the protein, thereby giving the best and the long-lasting immune response. So speaking of immune response, we've generated a multitude of preclinical trials, studies over the years. What I'm going to show in this slide and the next slides are actually all published in a very, very nice scientific paper in 2022. Here we show that we can basically induce an immune response across all the antibodies that we want to address. So we're talking about both IgM and IgG types. This is very good and very clear, as you can see from these graphs. The red curve here shows that we induce a high immune response in each of these antibody types when we use our vaccine together with an adjuvant. We have also seen very nice data in resistant cells. Resistance is a very important topic here. because with standard of care, it's known that in up to 30% of cases, patients will develop resistance to this therapy, so it will have no real benefit in the longer run. So in this graph to the left, this is an in vitro assay where we make a study in Petri dishes, where we have dishes that have treatment-resistant cells, and you can see in the blue curve, if you apply Herceptin, also known as trastuzumab, you will generate tumor colonies. Whereas if you apply our vaccine, shown with the orange and red here, these colonies don't develop. So that's a very clear picture of actually overcoming resistance in treatment-resistant cells. To the right, you see from an animal study where we basically count development of tumor nodules in lungs in mice. And you have a vehicle, that's a control, and you have two active groups where you give our vaccine E2B-C001, both excluding and including an adjuvant. And remarkably, whether it's excluding or including an adjuvant, we are able to, as you can see, hinder the development of nodules in the lung of these mice. We have also seen that in further data. These are really compelling data here. To the left, that's a so-called animal study in Delta 16 mice. Delta 16 means that these mice are transgenically born with a mutation that will make them develop the tumor in time. So they are born to develop a tumor. And so what we do is have a control group as shown in the black curve to the left, and a green curve where we have applied our vaccine without an adjuvant, and a red curve which is our vaccine with an adjuvant. Perhaps here I should say, what is an adjuvant? An adjuvant is a typical component in vaccines. It's in basically all vaccines, most vaccines that you have on the market, and it stimulates the immune responses. And here we work with an adjuvant that also makes the results quite remarkable. So in that left curve, you can see these transgenically disposed mice will actually develop tumors about week 20 to 14, and after 5 to 6 months, they will die. Where actually, if you see our vaccine being treated in these mice, from the start, you will actually see that they will survive, as shown in the red curve. To the right, you have another very interesting outcome. These are FVB mice. These are so-called standard laboratory mice that are used in all animal studies, not disposed for development of anything, just surviving. So what we do is actually inoculate them with the tumor cell line, with the HER2 tumor. So they will then carry the tumor over time. And here it's about development of the tumor over time. And you can see if they are not treated, the tumor will grow. However, again, you have the green curve without an adjuvant and the red curve with an adjuvant. And it's remarkable with an adjuvant that you have no development of tumor whatsoever in these mice, even though they carry the HER2 tumor line. So, of course, we are very excited by these preclinical data, and that's what we aim to translate into a human setting as well. And very nicely, we have started the clinical phase 1 now. We filed the clinical trial application last year and got the approval to start it in December 2024. And here in Q2, we were able to dose the very first patient. This is a clinical study that is being carried out in Austria. We were in discussions with the Austrian authorities about conducting this trial. It's a clinical phase 1 safety trial, and it's an open label dose escalation safety trial where we are allowed to enroll up to 27 patients. And then this study is in a way two-parted. So you have a first part where we talk about a dose escalation part, where we will test 3 different doses of the immunotherapy in 3 patients each. That means up to 9 patients. And following the 9 patients, we can carry on with a dose expansion part where we investigate further in up to 18 patients on what we have found out in the first part. And we have now dosed 2 patients, and we are in a phase of screening for our 3rd patient. We have had our protocol amended this summer. We were a little bit annoyed here in the beginning of the year that we got the approval to start the trial in December, and why didn't we start immediately in January? I was a bit naive. There are always something that can drag it a bit along. Now we have made a protocol amendment which allows to also carry out this study in 2 more sites in Austria, because at first it was a single site study only taking place at the Medical University in Vienna. Now we can also include sites in Linz and Graz as well. Furthermore, we also got the approval to expand with 5 other clinics in Vienna. So we have many sites now where we can enroll patients. And then we also got the regulatory approval to enroll patients who are already undergoing treatments with antibody-drug conjugates. So antibody-drug conjugates is in line with monoclonal antibody therapies, standard of care treatments. Antibody-drug conjugates have, in particularly the last few years, gained traction. They were first launched with the now blockbuster Enhertu 2 years ago. Now we are allowed to carry out our safety study in patients who are also undergoing treatment with antibody-drug conjugates. And this is important because we know that combination therapy is very important when treating breast cancers. So we also want to be allowed to do that with our immunotherapy approach. In terms of timing, we are looking into getting interim analysis in the middle of 2026 and completing the study by end of 2026, as it looks as of today. So I think we have momentum in this trial. This is basically a repetition of the regulatory approval that we have gained here over summer, and that we are allowed to combine with antibody-drug conjugates. Furthermore, that we have the Vienna network in place now, and lastly also that we are allowed to expand with 2 new clinical sites. In terms of market potential, this is a vast market. First of all, you heard the patient numbers and cases in the beginning, but there are also major players in this field, and the overall market is assessed to be about 27 billion euro. It's a high growth market. It will continue to grow, and there's still high unmet needs in this. We think we have a very important position in this market with our approach. We're looking into standard of care treatments such as Herceptin, Perjeta that I mentioned, Enhertu that I just mentioned, an antibody-drug conjugate therapy that already after a few years sells for $2.6 billion. And there's some key trends in this market going towards earlier lines of treatment. So far, we have seen standard of care being first with non-targeted therapies such as radiotherapy and chemotherapy, and then comes HER2-directed therapies in our case as second line or third line. And we may be fourth line when we start, but we can see moving up the ladder with our approach. That's the target, and we can see other well-known standard of cares having been able to progress on that as well. Furthermore, it's been mainly HER2-positive patients that have been addressed with standard of care. Now we've seen HER2-low patients also being targeted with the Enhertu drug product, and we are very thrilled that ExpreS2ion has allowance from the Austrian authorities to also include HER2-low patients as well. So in all modesty, we believe we have a blockbuster potential that we're sitting on a blockbuster with a potential to sell more than 5 billion euro per year. And a small footnote is, if you look at the market, there's some extremely interesting licensing deals that are also being announced from time to time. Big players like Merck and Roche have announced deals that are even in the early clinical stage, where there are several $100 million of upfront payments and several billion dollar deals being made. So that's what we're looking into with our own project here. So that was all about the lead asset ES2B-C001, our breast cancer opportunity. This is number 1 on this chart of our pipeline. This is 100% sponsored by ExpreS2ion, so that's why it's super important to carry on with this and generate the value that we see in this. We have a lot of other pipeline opportunities in infectious diseases primarily, but I think it's very important to say that they are more or less all sponsored by non-diluting funding from the EU or even from the Danish state, and even from the English state. If you look at malaria, there are 4 different projects here. They're all being carried out by University of Oxford, who has a license to use our ExpreS production system to make antigens in malaria vaccines. And they are luckily have progressed into clinical phase 1 and 2 with all of those 4 projects. In fact, at this moment as we speak, there are 9 different clinical studies being carried out, which is even more than when I presented here last year. So Oxford, they're really progressing on this. And we announced a while ago that we have entered into a term sheet with Serum Institute of India on 2 of those malaria projects. That's the RS5.1 and R78C, which are in clinical phase 1 and 2. Serum Institute of India being the world's largest vaccine manufacturer, of course, we're still in discussions with them and expect to carry out with that licensing agreement. In influenza, we are conducting 2 different projects. One is the so-called Indigo project that has been EU funded the last 5 years, and after 5 years of research, we now have a lead candidate to carry on with. Furthermore, we have Mucovax, which is a more simple setup with Copenhagen University and funded by the Danish state. This is exploring mucosal pathways for delivery of novel influenza vaccines. And then we have a Nipah virus vaccine project sponsored by EU as well. And I should say, for breast cancer and Nipah virus, we apply both ExpreS2ion's production platform and the VLP system from AdaptVac. It's the same setup as what we saw, and now we're going to take your attention to the bottom part of this chart, the COVID-19 asset, which was carried all through clinical phase 3. It met the primary endpoint in a COVID-19 trial sponsored by Bavarian Nordic, which documented that this concept of our ExpreS-made antigens and AdaptVac's VLP work. Very briefly on strategy, we pursue our pipeline activities led by ES2B-C001. We intensify our collaboration with the grant-sponsored projects, and we have our IP platform being solidified. We have filed new patents that will endure our patents even beyond 2040s. And we have used our platform actually as a service provider the first 10 years of the company's lifetime. It's only the last 5 years we've been more pipeline focused. And we have experience with more than 100 clients that have been using our ExpreS system to make antigens for research purposes. So catalyst news flow coming up is very much dependent on the ES2B-C001. Of course, we're going to report as soon as we see safety and tolerability in the patients that are enrolled in the first clinical trial. We're also measuring immunogenicity parameters, so there will be some notion of efficacy. Of course, we are analyzing this carefully and we'll make the announcement as we go along. And then we have all these clinical studies carried out by Oxford, which we will be informing of on a rolling basis. And of course, in the Nipah virus vaccine project, we are looking into a selection of a lead candidate, so the consortium with that grant-sponsored project can carry on with the research. And we're going to finalize the Serum Institute of India licensing deal, so that is in motion, and carry on with our IP and grant that I just described. Let me move into a bit of our financing. Before I do that, I just want to announce that we have an upcoming TO11 warrant program. So this is part of the rights issue that we did in the first half of 2024. This is the second of the 2 warrant programs that were associated with that rights issue. It's it has a subscription period now from the September 18 until October 2nd. The exercise price will be set at a 30% discount to the average share price in the first 10 days of September, as measured from Monday, now 1st of September, until 12th of September. So we did a reverse split in the autumn of 2024. So you need 40 warrants to convert into 1 new shares. That's important to mention. So there's an investor upside in this with the 30% discount, and we'll be informing much more about this here in the coming weeks. We last week just announced our half-year report, our Q2 interim report, and I was very pleased that we could announce positive development on top line and the cost line. This is the top line showing that we actually grew in sales with a 49% growth rate. The overall income grew with 61% if you look at it half year to half year 2024. It is generated by an improvement in client sales, as well as further income generated from the grant-sponsored activities. On the cost side, we have been very disciplined, so we have actually decreased our cost compared with the last couple of years. For this quarter, we have a 35% decrease in cost. And you can see the split on external R&D cost and personnel cost. We maintain a very disciplined infrastructure now with 18 people working out of our labs in Copenhagen. And we have a lower burn rate now on the external R&D cost because the clinical study is actually being carried out in a very cost-friendly manner, I should say. And going forward, I will even say that I believe with the magnitude being in the 3 to maximum 5 patients at a time in this study, I don't see any larger progression on that post. This is our cash position and the development over time. We had 49 million SEK at 30th of June this year. You will see during the last 2 years how we have managed to keep the cash position over time, sometimes supported by our shareholders with rights issues, but also being supported by grant prepayment. And we also had a very nice dividend from a DAPBack last year, which came into the company in connection with completion of the phase 3 milestone payment from Bavarian Nordic. So that was good. We are quite transparent here. We're talking about runway through Q1 2026. It may be longer, but that's where we are at the moment. And of course, we're exploring all kinds of sourcing, and we'll of course continue with that. The major target milestones are dependent on the ES2B's T001 clinical data in 2026. I think it's also important to mention that we've raised more than 90 million SEK over time, both via grants and non-diluting funding, and then the dividend from a DAPBack. Lastly, of course, being a biotech company, there are risks involved in a company like ours, but I think we are mitigating them proactively. Here we're talking about clinical risk, partnership, business development dependence, and funding going forward. If you look at the clinical side, I think just addressing the enrollment of this clinical phase 1 trial, we have handled very neatly with getting a protocol that has now been approved to expand on the enrollment. So we're mitigating on that risk. Furthermore, when it comes to partnerships, we are quite active in business development, both in terms of non-diluting funding as well as other partnerships. And lastly, but not least, on the cash need for funding, of course, we're exploring how we can proceed. I think that was a quick talk from my side. So I'm ready to take some questions. And I just want to say, if I don't get to answer all the questions, please take note of the email here, investor@expressionbio.com, where you can always contact us.
Thank you, Bent.
Thank you.
Very exciting indeed. Some general questions of understanding first. My AI told me 2022 there were about 13,000 new diagnoses of breast cancer in Sweden. And you had a number of people, the 635,000, what population was that for active breast cancer?
The 685,000 is actually the death by HER2 cancer in the world.
Oh, so that's HER2, that's what you're
Yes.
targeting.
Yes.
And then my AI told me that HER2 is 15 to 20% of all breast cancer cases. Is that about correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Even 15 to 25%. There are various sources.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but this is not a treatment, this is a vaccine. So if you look at the population in Sweden, when this is successful, who do you see receiving this vaccine? All the women or some women or people with the cancer? What is it?
That's a very good question, and I'm very glad you raised this. If I didn't mention this carefully, it's in first instance a therapeutic vaccine. So patients will have been diagnosed with breast cancer. It will have been characterized as a HER2 expressing cancer. They may have undergone treatment with the standard of care, going through all the opportunities there are, both non-targeted therapies to start with before standard of care, HER2 targeted therapies such as monoclonal antibodies or antibody drug conjugates. But there's a lot of, as I mentioned, resistance, there's a lot of relapse, and we believe with our therapeutic vaccine approach that we can come in and hinder the further development of the cancer. So in that sense, it's a therapeutic vaccine.
Yes.
Now, of course, in the long term, the aim would be to have a prophylactic vaccine, but that's not where we are to start with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this aims still on the treatment. And how many women have breast cancer right now in Sweden? Round number?
Oh, that's a good question. I would. Sorry,
If
I don't have that.
13,000 new
yes,
in 2022,
yes.
it should be something like
Yes.
100,000 or something. It's a big number.
Mm-hmm.
And then HER2 would be 20,000. So that's, you're aiming to treat a big part of them. So, but this is very different from like the HPV vaccine, which
That is correct.
are there to eliminate HPV. This is another thing.
That is correct.
Okay.
HPV vaccines were introduced with a prophylactic, actually of a 10-year duration of the vaccine, but has shown to actually have a long-lasting effect. But that's also where we aim to come. But in first instance, I think we need to address also the therapeutic need there's there to actually improve on the standard of care that are there at the moment.
Yeah.
Of course, in the long run, it would be great to have a prophylactic vaccine.
Yeah. So you started phase 1 now for the breast cancer vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
It would take forever if we go through everything that's exciting that you do. So we will focus on the HER2, but I know you have more. But if we look at the money, are you funded so you could run the phase 1 to conclusion?
I think I made it clear here that we have funding through Q1 2026. And at the same...
I guess I'm asking then, when does the phase 1 conclude?
We have interim data coming up in the middle of 2026 and completion by end of 2026. So of course there's a gap in that, and we are quite transparent on that and doing everything we can on partnering, business development, for example, other kinds of sourcing before actually trying to do other solutions.
But aims of the phase 1 are, sorry to be blunt, the usual. It's to show that you don't lose hair or get another illness. It's that it's safe.
Of course, it's a safety study.
Yeah.
So safety and tolerability are the main objectives, but we have secondary measure points as well, where we measure immunogenicity. So we look into various efficacy parameters as much as we can with the blood samples we get from the patients who are undergoing this treatment.
Yes.
That's going to be remarkable. I mean, if we can see something that we saw using the same approach with COVID-19, where bear in mind, we saw an immense increase in neutralizing antibodies, and it endured over time. If we can see that also in patients, something similar during the phase 1, that will be remarkable.
Yes, and those data are used to set the targets for the coming phase 2 study and now I'm guessing phase 2 for this would be late 2026 or 2027?
I think it's fair to say 2027. It will be a clinical proof of concept trial, where we will look into a larger pool of patients to measure also the parameters such as various survival parameters, and of course that's going to take some years. I cannot be precise at this
around
event
2
here.
years, 27, 28 for phase 2.
I will not be super precise here, but 28, yeah. Let's put it like that. I think what you're alluding to is a very important value trigger for us would be to have the clinical proof of concept. Let's say it's 28, 29.
Yeah.
It can have a big pharma partner go in and pay those $100 million upfront and maybe in $1 billion deal. That's what we are looking into. At this point in time, of course, there's still riskiness with it. But nevertheless, we have been able to raise some eyebrows with the pharmaceutical companies on our concept. And of course, they're saying, show us the clinical data. And that's what we are doing now.
But you will need a partner for phase 2 because now I'm taking a wild guess here.
I think it's fair to say that ExpreS2ion is a small, medium-sized, but small biotech company. And our aim is not to become a commercial company. We will definitely rely on a partner.
Yes, because the phase 2 for the HER2 study, that will be cost 3-4 times your market value.
It will be expensive.
200-300 million.
Yes, it will be expensive. Yes.
But you also bring something to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I love this new Google AI, so it helps my job a lot. And I asked it, are there any breast cancer vaccines in phase 2 currently? And it mentioned 3. One of them was Moderna with a market cap of $10 billion US. And I'm guessing they use mRNA. You have your
We use
research is VLP based. Can you
VLP.
compare those two?
Yes.
What you bring to the table, and does a small guy like you stand a chance?
Of course we do. Moderna, of course, they are dominating in the mRNA field, and they came to all our attention during the pandemic.
And they have some of the property rights for mRNA. Is that correct?
I think there are some IP discussions between Moderna and BioNTech out of Germany on that. But I think the most important thing is to say that mRNA vaccines, they have not the same long-term durable effect, that's for sure. So that's what we aim to achieve with our protein-based VLP approach. And we have the documentation that shows that it can be durable. And of course, we have in the preclinical setting long-term survival data.
Yeah.
I don't think mRNA vaccines can do that. Now, there's another new political aspect
if they
here,
like you,
on mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
You know, with the current U.S. administration, and they have kind of wiped out more than 20 funding of more than 20
Yes.
mRNA projects. So that may be an opportunity for the good protein-based VLP approach.
And it, just like with COVID-19 vaccines, big pharma could buy you just as a side bet to keep your options open.
Mm-hmm.
Could happen.
Yeah, that's a scenario as well that we have to take into consideration.
Just one more general question, then we'll leave to a good question from an investor in the audience. This is going to function so that it triggers the immune system to take care of it itself. And I'm guessing there are other vaccines coming that also trigger the immune system. Is there an end to how many vaccines I can have in my body? How much can my immune system take? Can I, in the future, get a jab and it's a vaccine for 15 different serious diseases? Or will that be too much for the immune system? Will it boil or something happen?
I mean, just based on Danish experience, children are being offered vaccines from birth, and there are up to 17 different vaccines that you take during childhood. In the US, it's more than 50 different vaccines that are available, but not all are taking them, of course. So it shouldn't be an issue in terms of uptake in your body.
Okay, so there in the US, some people with good insurance and healthy checkbook can get vaccines for 50 different diseases today. Okay. Yeah, side issue. Question from the audience.
First, just a detailed question. In the phase 1, you are now including ADC-treated patients. Will that in any way complicate the interpretation of the results?
No, in the sense that we can measure, we measure on specific HER2 antibody raising. And of course, we'll have to see how those readouts are when we look over time. So these patients are actually being enrolled where they're being dosed every third week in 5 weeks. So in that sense, we'll look at the samples and test on that. Yeah.
And then on the duration, would it be plausible that this might be a lifelong duration of the vaccination?
Again, we have to look into the dosing and the effect on that one before you can answer on that one. Again, now I'm referring to the COVID-19 vaccine, where we got evidence of enduring effect over time. And I cannot help using myself as an example in that, because I was in fact enrolled in the clinical phase 3 trial for the COVID-19. Of course, I didn't know if this was a comparison between the existing mRNA vaccine, Comirnaty from Pfizer, and our vaccine sponsored by Bavarian Nordic. So I didn't know if I got one or another. It was unblinded 2 years after I got that jab, which turned out to be our own vaccine. And although our company offers mRNA COVID-19 vaccines to employees, I don't do that, of course, and I felt fine, right? So.
Short question, short answer, short question, short answer. Then you're overdue for another meeting.
Because if the duration is long, then one could look into a prophylactic vaccine given more or less to every woman at a certain age.
Yes, and even very early perhaps. So that's right. That's the potential in the long term.
I'd like to continue this question about the financials. You said you have a runway to Q1 2026, but they didn't include the contributions from the TO11 in that.
No, that is correct. That's important to say. And I think also I should, sorry for interrupting, but it's not to Q1, it's through Q1. So you can say it's to Q2.
Q1. Yeah. So if fully signed on, how much would that contribute? And also, you mentioned contributions from AdaptVac last year and other sources. So could you give us a feeling of the chances of getting known likelihood of, I don't know how to put it, for such other sources of revenue from AdaptVac, from grants, from the TO11? Give us a sense of how much it could come from that.
Well, the specific AdaptVac dividend was related to the completion of the phase 3 milestone from Bavarian Nordic. That means the COVID-19 project. And unfortunately, Bavarian Nordic decided to stall that project. So there's no further milestone payments, as far as we know, coming out of that project. In terms of further funding for the breast cancer, I've mentioned non-diluting funding a couple of times, and we are exploring various ways also to fund the clinical phase 1 to the end and moving into phase 2, going down that route. We have actually some very nice dialogues with sources, not only in the EU, but also in other parts of the world where there are opportunities to gain funding from that. So that's
TO11 at the max. Roughly how much could that contribute? 1 million. 15 million?
On non-diluting sourcing?
TO11,
sorry, the TO11. It depends, as you know, of course, on the share price, on the subscription rate, maybe between 9 and 12 million SEK, which is a very good amount for us. That's
okay. Sorry, we're running over time, and Bent instructed me to be careful with that. But we appreciate your time and your effort. You're about 20 persons in ExpreS2ion Biotech?
We are 18.
18 persons.
Yes.
To you and your 17 colleagues, a big applause.
Thank you.
You're the good guys, making the world potentially a better place.
Exactly.
Not everybody can say that. Thank you.
Thank you.